country lane, wherever there's a cottage small beside.
By 1943, all of the teachers had left and gone back to London, and most of the kids, except for 20 of us or so, were left behind, and we were then integrated into the village school. And we had problems because we were foreigners, we were Cockneys from London, we spoke funny, we talked Cockney, and they made fun of us. And worse than that, the worst thing, we were Jews. And how worse can you be than being a Jew? They knew that I and my friends had killed Christ. We did it. It was our fault, so we were bad people. They took it out on us. Like most English villages, this one was really old, and the Church of England church was St. Peter's and St. Margaret's, and it was very old. It was part Anglo-Saxon and part Norman, and every succeeding king came along, they stick another piece on, and it's a sort of a mishmash of styles, but it's very pretty and very small. George Washington's family came from that area, and his grandmother, his great-grandmother, is buried in that churchyard, And Oliver Cromwell, the Lord Protector, came from Ely, which was 8 miles up the road. The village was very small. I don't know the population peacetime, because there was a lot of soldiers there. Well, I was there. Maybe 300 or 400 people, and there wasn't much there. There were 4 churches. There was the Church of England, Anglican, Methodist, Primitive Baptist, and Congregationalist. Aunt Ada went to the Congregational chapel, and I had to go too on Sundays. Didn't want to go, but I had to go. I learned the hymns and stuff. In the village, apart from the churches, there was a post office. There was one petrol station, but as I said, you couldn't buy petrol or gasoline either, which is almost the same. That was a joke. It's the same. There was a barber shop, 2 grocery shops. Remember the grocery shops. I'm getting back to the grocery shops. There was a doctor. There was a fish and chip shop that only opened Friday evening and Saturday, and the bank in Victoria Hall opened Friday morning. So if you had to do any banking, you better do it, I guess, from 9 till 12 on Friday. That was it. That was the only time it was open. It was a very small place. There was no place of entertainment. There was no library. There was no movies. There was nothing. There was a lot of pubs. There was no traffic light. I think they put a stop sign in, but couldn't guarantee it. This is our smallest places. Because of the air raids during the war, everybody had blackout curtains, and we had these big, heavy curtains on the windows and a big shutter on the front. And during the war, not only just in Fordham, but everywhere, all the street lights were turned out. No street lights, no neon signs, anywhere. Church bells couldn't be wrong, because if the church bells were wrong, this signaled that we were being invaded. And cars had the headlights masked, had a little slit so they could see where they were going. And everybody carried a flashlight or a torch. It's called a torch. And the batteries used to run down, so when they did, we used to put them in the oven sometimes to warm them up. It rejuvenates them. You may not know that, but you know, your alkalines run down. Maybe that works. Maybe they'll blow up. I don't know. Our next door neighbor had what they called an Anderson shelter. Now, this is an Anderson shelter. It's not very effective, but it's a corrugated iron structure. Maybe you can pass this around. They were handed out by the government if you wanted them, and people bolted them together, and they sort of half buried it in the ground and covered it with dirt, maybe put potatoes on the top. And it was okay if you didn't get a near hit, but if something came too close, you know, that was it. The trouble was they were sunk in the ground and they were very damp. We had occasionally used it just maybe 3 times in the whole war, and it was very, very wet. Damp. We didn't like to use it. But one winter's morning, I went to use the outside facilities, and I discovered that the 100-year-old structure, the outhouse, had collapsed. And like it had been hit by a 500-pound bomb. It was a pile of rubble. But it wasn't all that bad, as bad as it sounded, because next to it there was a wooden outhouse, you know, a one-holer. You know those things you see, with a seat and a hole? It didn't have one of those half-moon things, but other than that, it was a regular outhouse. And it had to be emptied periodically. So Aunt Ada would get Mr. Diver to help her at the dead of night, and they'd carry this thing and dump it in the cesspool. Fortunately, they never asked me to do that. I don't think I could have helped. So, now, I had very few toys, other than those that my predecessor, Jack, left behind. He left some toys, a few tin soldiers with no heads. And any of you guys ever have lead soldiers as kids? The heads used to break off. Well, I had a few of those and a few books. So what we did, we made our own toys. And it's surprising what you can make. I managed to persuade Aunt Ada to let me buy a pocket knife for maybe a shilling. You know, one-blade pocket knife. She didn't want me to have it because it was maybe 7, but I kept on and on. And with a pocket knife, and I got a piece of string, I was able to make a bow and arrows. And we used to shoot each other with these bows and arrows. You know, boys are pretty rotten, aren't they? I was, well. But we never hit each other because, you know, they weren't straight, and they'd hit here and the arrow would go over there, so it wasn't too dangerous. But a more dangerous thing we made was what we called a catapult, or a slingshot. But there was another problem. You couldn't get rubber. You couldn't get elastic. So making a slingshot, does anybody not know how a slingshot works? Okay. You pull it back and, you know, you fire a stone. So, unless you had a sister, and you could manage to borrow her panties perhaps, and steal the elastic out, you know, it was hard to make slingshots, catapults. I never did that. No, my sister was in London, you know. I probably would have if she'd have been it, but. So what we would do, we set up bottles on the wall and shoot the bottles, and the occasional, mysteriously, somebody's window would get broken, but, you know, it wasn't me, I never did it. But I was a pretty good kid. Another thing we did, these were toys, homemade toys. We made pea shooters. You know what elderberries are, right? Anybody not know what elderberry is? Please speak now. Okay.
Yes.
Elderberry, it's a shrub, and the inside of the wood is not solid like a regular piece of wood. It's soft material is called pith, and you can push it out, and you have a hollow tube. And what was great about elderberry and pea shooters is when the berries are green, and you shoot somebody like this, it stings like hell. It's like a BB. And better than that, when they're ripe and they're purple, and you shoot somebody, it explodes like a paintball. So it was great, and this is all stuff.
And it stains, right?
It sure does. And you scrape off the pith and you make elderberry wine. No, that's a lie.
Jerry, it's a little off the point, but my wife's maiden name in French was Sureau, which means elderberry.
Oh my God.
I knew that. Why do you think I'm talking about this? Every once in a while you somehow find a roller skate, you take the wheels off and make a scooter. But they were very scarce and highly prized. The other game we played, and you probably have never heard of this, is a game called Conkers. Anybody ever know about Conkers? No, it's in a British game, you wouldn't. See what it is. What these are, they're horse chestnuts. And I have a simulated conker here.
Pass it around.
Pass it around. This is one of the favorite games. This is in the fall. Now after the nuts are ripe, you go to a tree. This is a conker. Actually, what this is an oyster cracker. It's a simulated conker. So what you do, you hold that, and I go bang like that, and then try and break your conker. And if I'm successful, and I break yours, I'm a oneer. And if I'm successful with somebody else, break theirs, I'm a twoer. And so on. And if you're a twoer and I break yours, I'm a fourer.
So how far high up did you get?
Maybe 2, but what I never found out until a few years ago, this has become an international sport, believe it or not now. Kids used to soak these things in boiling vinegar, and it made them hard like this. And I didn't know that. And I only found out recently, and I never woke up maybe of a tour, but this is how you play conkers. And
they still play this now?
I'm sure they do. They have international competitions now.
Wow.
But they don't use it on your head.
Not supposed to, but maybe in some other country they do. But this is funny. Martha bought these. What oyster crackers?
Yeah.
And then I said, these things are hard as conkers. Hey, wait a minute! I use them to demo, and that's how I got this idea.